Today we will talk about the Ahuna Vairya, the most important prayer in our religion by far, popularly known by its first line, the Yata Ahu Vairya. But before we get into the Ahuna Vairya, I just wanted to share something my cousin Kurush sent me based on our last discussions on the Amesha Spentas. Kurush writes, the coalescence of wisdom, Vaumano, with devotion, Armati, is a perfect synthesis for a person on their journey to Ameritat, immortality. What an immaculate explanation. Thank you, Kurush, for sharing this, and I just thought I'll share it with all of you. Now to the Ahuna Vairya. In Yasna 19 is where the Ahuna Vairya is introduced, and the commentary or the explanation on the Ahuna Vairya is given, while the actual Ahuna Vairya prayer is in Yasna 27. So I'm reading out to you the translation which I've got online of Yasna 19, which will immediately give you the power and importance of the Ahuna Vairya in our religion. This translation is done by some very eminent authors, and I will also let you know who these authors are so that you understand where we are coming from on this. Just give me a second. So, Yasna 19. Zarathustra asks of Ahura Mazda, O Ahura Mazda, thou most bounteous spirit, maker of the corporeal worlds, the Holy One, which was that word which thou didst declare to me, which was before the sky and before the water, before the earth and before the cattle, before the plants and before the fire, and before the holy man and the demon gods, before the Shrafrashta men, and before all the incarnate world, even before all the good creatures made by Mazda, and which contain and are the seeds of righteousness. Thereupon Ahura Mazda said, it was this peace, the Ahuna Vairya, O Spitama Zarathustra, which I pronounced as thine. Before the sky and before the waters and before the land and before the cattle and the plants and before the fire, Ahura Mazda's son, before the holy man and before the devas and the Shafrasa men and before the entire corporeal world, even before the good creatures made by Mazda, which contain the seed of righteousness. It was these parts of the Ahuna Vairya, O Spitama Zarathustra, which especially belong to me. And when each is intoned loud, without repetition of verses and of words, and without their omission, it is worth 100 of their other stanzas. Even although they are prominent in the ritual, and likewise equally as well recited without additions or omissions, nay, further, when it is intoned imperfectly, but added to and with omissions, it is even then in effect equivalent to 10 other stanzas that are prominent. And whoever in this world of mine, which is corporeal, shall mentally recall, O Spitama Zarathustra, a portion of the Ahuna Vairya, and having thus recalled it, shall undertone it, or beginning to recite it with the undertone, shall then utter it aloud, or chanting it with intoning voice, shall worship thus. Then with even threefold safety and with speed, I will bring his soul over the bridge of Chinvat. I who am Ahura Mazda, I will help him to pass over it to heaven and to righteousness the best and to the lights of heaven. And whoever, O Spitama Zarathustra, while intoning the parts of the Ahuna Vairya, or this piece, the Ahuna Vairya, takes aught therefrom, whether the half or the third or the fourth or the fifth, I who am Ahura Mazda will draw his soul off from the better world. Yes, so far off will I withdraw it, as the earth is large and wide, and this earth is as long as it is broad. And then I'll just take one more para of this. And this word is the most emphatic of the words which has ever been pronounced. or which are now spoken, or which shall be spoken in the future. The eminence of this utterance is a thing of such nature that if all the corporeal and living world should learn it, and learning it should hold fast by it, they would be redeemed from their mortality. So as you can see, before anything and everything came the Ahuna Vairya. Will of the Lord. And like in many other religions, and like science tells us about Big Bang Theory, what the Ahuna Vairya is the first sound, the first utterance of Ahura Mazda before anything else has come about in the world. And that's the importance of the prayer. I need to tell you as to where the source of this was from. Essentially, this translation I've got is from an online version available. Just a minute. It's the English translation of the Holy Zen Avastha, the Yasna, by James Darmestater, Dhala, B.N. Dhabar, L. Mills, J. Peterson, and C. Bartholomé. And it's downloaded by me from the net. Now, given this background, let us come to the actual translation of the Ahuna Vairya. So I will read out two versions of the Ahuna Vairya. One is from this lovely little book that I have, which is written by D.S. Framrose. It's called the Mazda Yasna, Some Daily Prayers from the Zen Avastha. And I really like this translation because of its simplicity. And it reads, just as the temporal ruler is all powerful among men, so too is the spiritual teacher, even by reason of his righteousness. So, the sovereign is all powerful among men, so is the spiritual teacher, by virtue or by reason of his righteousness. The gifts of the good mind are for those who work for Mazda, the Lord of life. The gifts of the good mind, Vahumano, are for those who work for Mazda, the Lord of life. And the strength of Ahura is given to him who unto his poor brethren give help. And that is where our whole concept of supporting others, the whole concept of true charity and true giving comes in. And the strength of Ahura Mazda is given unto him who unto his poor brethren give help. And that's the beauty of the prayer, the Ahuna Vairya. So it talks about the position of the spiritual teacher by virtue of his righteousness or her righteousness, and how for those who work for Mazda, the Lord of life, the gifts of the good mind are there. And Ahura gives strength, and the strength of Ahura is for those who work with their poor brethren. I'll read out another sort of translation, similar lines by Tara Porwala in his book on the Gathas, which says, just as the sovereign Lord is all powerful, Yata Ahuna Vairya, so is the spiritual teacher by reason of the store of Asha. The gifts of Vahumano are for deeds done for the Lord of creation, and the Shatra of Ahura. We saw Shatra as one of the Amesha Spentas. The Shatra of Ahura descends indeed upon them who become a shepherd to the meek. Similar concept. And the whole concept of the Ahuna Vairya is have to help others. You have to help your fellow human beings. And that's where our core concept of charity emerges from in our religion. And this prayer, the Ahuna Vairya, as we saw in that Yasna 19, is by far the most important prayer in our religion. And which is why we are constantly praying the Yatha Vairya. And which is why each one of our prayers have identified, against each one of our prayers is identified the number of Yatha Vairyas you can pray as a substitute for praying that prayer. And this all comes around from the fact that, as described in Yasna 19, it is the first will of the Lord, as it were, the first prayer in our religion, and being the first and the most important prayer in our religion. If you pray nothing else, but if you pray the Yatha Vairya, then God will deliver you to salvation. And that's essentially what the Yatha Vairya is all about. Like I said, it is explained in the actual Yatha Vairya is part of Yasna 27, translation of which we've seen just now. Well, while we are at it, in our religion, there are three chants. So it's the Yatha Vairya, the Hashem Vahu, and the Yange Hatam. So while we are at it, I'll just give you a quick translation of the Hashem Vahu, which is also in Yasna 27, and for whom the commentary is in Yasna 20. So I'll just give it to you. The Hashem Vahu goes as this: righteousness is the highest good and is the illumination of life. This illumination comes to that life which is righteous for the sake of highest righteousness. So the Hashem Vahu just talks about righteousness, Asha. We saw in the previous discussion, Damesha spent the Asha. And it is saying that righteousness is the highest good. So that's the final attainment that we have to all reach for. And it is the illumination of life. And it comes to those who are righteous for the sake of highest righteousness. So righteousness as an end in itself. And that's what the Hashem Vahu says. It is again featuring in the Yasna 27. So the Yatha Vairya is Yasna 27.13. Hashem Vahu is Yasna 27.14. And the third chant in our religion, which is the Yange Hatam, which is what I'll read out to you, which is Yasna 27.15. They indeed of those that are of whom in every act of worship Mazda Ahura knoweth to be of higher worth, by reason of their righteousness. Also the woman of whom he knoweth likewise. All such, both these men and these women, do we revere. So just putting it in plain English, those men and women both do we adore, whose every act of worship is alive with Asha, the eternal law of life, who are in sight of our Mazda Aura as best and noblest mortals recognize. These are the truest leaders of mankind. So that's the Yange Hatam. So the Hashem Vahu, the Yange Hatam, and the Yatha Vairya are the three chants in our religion, but by far the Yatha Vairya, which is the Ahuna Vairya, is the most important of them all. In fact, those who pray will recall that in our prayers we have this Yatha Vairya Zota Frame Marute Yataratu Sashachi Datar Fara Shaur Vidva Maroto. And it comes in many of our prayers, and this is what it means. May the Zauta, that is the chief priest, recite the Yatha Vairya, and may the holy and wise recite the Yatha Ratush Ashachi Tasha. So Zauta, the main priest, and Rathvi, which is the holy and wise, recite the Yatha Ratush Ashachi Tasha. So, and this thing comes in most of our prayers. Yatha Vairya Zauta Frame Marute Yatha Ratush Ashachi Tasha. And then it goes into saying Farashavar Vidvomaru. That's the prayer. There is also another chant which comes very often in our prayers, which says, Ahunim Vairim Tanum Paiti, Ahunim Vairim Tanum Paiti, Ahunim Vairim Tanum Paiti. That is also something which we'll encounter in our prayers. And that means the Ahuna Vairya saves the self. The Ahuna Vairya saves the self. The Ahuna Vairya saves the self. And once again, cannot overemphasize the importance of the Ahuna Vairya in our prayers. It is, after all, the will of the Lord, and it is the first utterance of the Lord before creation in many ways began. And that's the importance of the Ahuna Vairya. I'd like to end this session with one more message that was sent to me by another friend of mine, Vilu. Vilu just forwarded something very nice to me, which I thought I'll read out to you, something to do with our religion. And Vilu writes to me, why do the word Yasnaicha, Vammaicha, Shnothraicha, and Prasasthiaicha repeatedly occur in Zoroastrian prayers? The response is from her. There are various ways of approaching the divine. Yasnaicha is the path of worship and veneration. Vammaicha is the path of devotion. Shnothraicha is the path of pleasing God by doing God's work. And Prasasthiaicha is the path of knowledge. So the words Yasnaicha, Vammaicha, Shnothraicha, and Prasasthiaicha repeated in Zoroastrian prayers indicate the 4 different ways in which a person can connect with Ahura Mazda and other divine beings. Thank you, Velu, for sharing this. And this is just a request to anyone who is seeing this video. If there's anything which you'd like to interact with me and share with me, which I can then share on to others, please do let me know. Please do connect with me. Please don't hesitate, because we're all in this journey together. Like I've always said, this is just a personal discovery of mine, which I'm just sharing with you, neither scholastic nor deeply spiritual, just personal. And in the next session, I would like to talk about Yasna 30, which is part of the Gathas, which is the first sermon of Zarathustra, the first sermon he gives to his small followers, where the whole duality of good and evil is introduced by him. And I thought during the next session, we will talk a bit about Yasna 30. Till then, thank you.